are the newest GPUs from Nvidia and AMD that just came out, basically getting a discount already. Look at some of these numbers. This is the Nvidia 4070 Ti. Some of them already have a bit of a discount, as well as the AMD 7900 XT. There's a very good reason for this. These GPUs are not selling well. Is the RTX 4090 getting a discount? No way. They can't even keep it in stock. We're talking about the worst value GPUs on the market right now, and that's going to be some of these GPUs, like the RTX 4080 is another one that we have been talking about for the last several weeks. At $1199, it is something that every gamer pretty much is really mad at. Nobody wants to pay that price for the GPU because, of course, that's the base MSRP. Some of them go up to $1,549, such as the Asus Strix, which is a pretty big markup for what basically is the same performance, give or take a few points. We haven't seen the RTX 4080 discounted nearly as much, but for example, Best Buy, which in the US is the only place that can sell Nvidia's Founders Edition, they allowed a coupon for 10% off that actually a lot of my viewers were able to use. Imagine on any other product, they would have made it excluded. Any product that's really high in demand or from certain companies, they put an exclusion on it so you can't use the coupon. But they allowed these GPUs to be purchased without any issues and get 10% off. That means that they're okay with letting them go because they're not selling anywhere near what they were previously. So they figure they might as well sell it at a small discount rather than hold on to them and just have a massive amount of stock. Even with that, the 4080 Founders Edition has been in stock, it seems like, for weeks now at Best Buy. And if we look down the stack, the 4070 Ti has had a lot of people complaining about it. Okay, the actual GPU for 1440p is not a bad GPU at all. The only complaint you could really say is that 12 gigabytes of VRAM is really not acceptable at $799. And of course, the memory bus is cut down a tremendous amount, making it nothing like the 4080 it was really supposed to be. Remember, Nvidia called this an RTX 4080 12 gigabyte just a few months ago. 4070 Ti is still a bit of a stretch. This should have been like a 4070 or a 4060 Ti at best. But here we are, and at $799, even I just checked now, this GPU is in stock basically everywhere at its MSRP. That's not good news, and that means it's going to start to get discounted very soon. And if you guys like GPU news and content like this, market analysis, remember to subscribe and smash that like button. Help the channel reach 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So now $799 is the base 4070 Ti, and it's being discounted at the more expensive models. Like I showed you an example of that MSI Supreme. Even though it's only a $50 discount at this point, that's still a discount on a brand new GPU that literally just came out this month. That's going to be interesting to see what they do with the $799 model. The more expensive ones, you can expect that they're going to be discounted. The ones that were previously like $899 will probably go down to $849. The ones that were $999, maybe they might get a little bit steeper of a price cut, maybe down to $899. That's not even going to make people buy them anyway. The only one that I could see that people would buy with a bigger discount, maybe like the Asus Strix or some of the tough GPUs. Those people seem to like a little bit more than like Zotac or something like that because of the brand name. Now, the interesting thing here is these other GPUs are getting discounted that are more expensive. Okay, what about the base $799? Are we going to start to see $749 and maybe $699? I think actually we might. Within the next few weeks, the next month or two, we could definitely see that base price go down. I mean, there's definitely some precedence for this. If you look at the 3090 Ti, that came out and quickly started to get heavily discounted. By the end of its life, I guess if you want to call it, even though it was very short, it really was around $1,099, down a pretty significant amount from $1,999. Now, it's not a bad GPU. It was just really overpriced. And even at $1,099, I mean, people bought it, but not really the greatest value proposition. And that kind of comes back to the 4070 Ti. It does have some weird similarities with the 3090 Ti, mainly because people are really comparing the performance against the 3090 Ti. A couple of problems with that. I mean, the 24 gigabytes of VRAM and the memory bus bandwidth really different on the 3090 3090 Ti. That's going to blow the 4070 Ti out of the water for like content creation. And even, if you're doing 4K, ray tracing, anything that's going to eat up that VRAM is going to start to maybe hit that wall and struggle on the 4070 Ti. Aside from that, the 4070 Ti in traditional rasterization, especially 1440p, seems to put up a pretty valiant effort against the 3090 Ti. In a lot of cases, it's very similar, if not a little under. Sometimes it beats it. And of course, with ray tracing, it's similar unless you really start to tax it with 4K and turn on absolutely every single option. A key thing that, for the 4070 Ti does have over the 3090 Ti will be the ability to use DLSS 3.0. Some people don't like it. Some people think it's like a miracle technology. Right now, I'm a little bit on the fence about it. Like, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. And I understand there's some problems with artifacting and some issues like that. But especially on the GPU, like the 4070 Ti, I think it could really come in handy. It could actually push you over the limit with some frames per second. Like if you're struggling to hit maybe 60, or maybe your monitor's refresh rate, 120, 144 hertz, I could see DLSS 3.0 really pushing it forward, especially in like single player games where you don't need to have really good low latency. Of course, if you're going to be playing a competitive game, you probably want to turn your settings down anyway, and it's going to do fine like that without DLSS 3.0 in most like esports titles. But if you want to enjoy nice visuals and also have nice frame rates while not really noticing that something kind of gimmicky or weird is going on, DLSS 3.0 seems to be pretty good. I mean, it has that frame generation technology. Yes, those are like fake frames, as some people like to say, but in some games you don't even really notice it. And together with Nvidia Reflex, it does help to lower that latency. And at least for a game like Microsoft Flight Simulator, maybe Plague Tale Requiem, I've been playing that game recently, and the game actually feels fantastic. If you play like on the 4090, completely maxed out, you don't have to do DLSS. You can just do it straight through and you'll get around 60 frames per second. But if you want to do 1440p or 4K on the 4070 Ti, that's where you probably want to do DLSS, and it's going to give you frame generation and things like that. In that case, you're going to get better performance there than on something like a 3090 Ti. But Nvidia isn't the only one that's starting to cut prices on these GPUs. AMD with specifically the 7900 XT. Now, the XTX at $999, most people seem to be okay with that price, even though it's had those cooler issues for the reference models. Most of them don't seem really tremendously overpriced. Like the AIB models stayed fairly close to that reference MSRP this generation. If it wasn't for those cooler issues really putting a damper on the marketing side of it, I think the GPU would have been a little more popular, better received. And of course, AMD did maybe kind of predict that the GPU was going to be a little better than it really was. Those numbers where they said up to a certain amount really didn't pan out, and it kind of disappointed a lot of gamers. But the 7900 XT at $899, first, it doesn't look good compared to the $999 XTX, which for $100 more, you're going to be getting a considerable better performing GPU. Now, the 7900 XT compared to the 4070 Ti, that's where it starts to get a little bit murky. They both end up looking really overpriced for what should be maybe like mid-range GPUs, but being sold now as basically high-end GPUs. I think that the 7900 XT should have been called the 7800 XT. It's a different class of GPU than the other 7900, and it should definitely have come in cheaper. The original 6800 XT came in around like $650, and that one would seem to be closer in performance to the $999 6900 XT. I actually have it here. That one seemed to be a lot closer to this than the 7900 XT is to the current XTX, which is a little bit weird considering they only cost like $100 difference, and before it was a much bigger difference with this generation. But we've already seen some discounts on the XT as well. It hasn't been as big as like $50 on the Ti, but that was kind of before the 70 Ti came out, and you've seen instead of $899, I've seen them for like $879 for that reference edition. It's going to be interesting to see if it eventually drops to $799 to meet the price of the 4070 Ti. And then I don't know which one you would choose. I mean, ray tracing on Nvidia usually is better, but on the 7900 XT, according to a lot of different reviews, it's actually not that bad, and AMD certainly caught up a decent amount this generation. They're both going to be probably near the level of like a 3090 or 3090 Ti. Of course, if you step up to a 4080 or 4090, that's when you're going to have a huge ray tracing difference, and of course with everything else that Nvidia provides like DLSS 3.0. But at this level of the 7900 XT, it's really not that bad against the 4070 Ti, and in many rasterization games it does definitely beat it. So I could see it being pretty popular if AMD lowers the price. It's in stock basically everywhere, and people don't really want to pay $899 for it, so it's going to have to really get a nice price cut. $799 I think would probably be more realistic, at least $100 less. That way it's going to force Nvidia to probably drop their 4070 Ti, maybe to like $749 or something like that. Originally it should have been $699. I think it would have sold much better, but I think Nvidia is also keeping RTX 3000 GPUs sort of on the back burner because they know that that's the mainstream GPUs for gamers. That's literally what they said, because the price points are typically going to be under that $700 mark unless you start going up to like the 3080 or something like that, and then it makes more sense probably to get a 4070 Ti at this point. All right guys, so let me know what you think down below. Do you think the GPUs are going to continue to get a price cut, or do you think the companies are really going to hold fast and not drop any prices at all and maybe not just sell as many? Let me know what you think. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.